All right, joining me is Kenton Gibbs. You know him from Locked On ACC, Locked On Wolfpack. He has been leading the charge on my Twitter feed of basically why Florida State has been screwed out of the college football playoffs. So, Ken, we're just going to start right here. Why do you think Florida State, undefeated Power 5 champions, was left out of the playoff this year?
Because they aren't a part of the singularity that's coming. I mean, let's just be honest, right? Alabama is in what conference, James?
The SEC.
Texas, as of next year, will be a part of what conference, James?
The SEC.
Michigan is a part of what conference, James?
Big Ten.
And as of next year, Washington will be part of what conference, James?
The Big Ten.
Oh, okay. I mean, there's your answer. There's your answer. This was pushed by the idea that we need to, as a committee, we need to avoid blowouts. That's our job. Our job is to avoid blowouts. Well, let me tell you something, committee. You've been doing a damn poor job of it since the inception of this thing, and you're not going to do it this year. I am willing to bet any amount of money that there will still be some blowouts in this year's playoff, because that is the nature of the beast. And the reality is, I love that it's not, they're saying now, it's not the 4 most deserving teams, it's the 4 best teams. Well, how does that math work out? How does that math work out? Do you believe that Georgia went from being 2 teams better than Washington last week to being worse than them because of this loss? And everybody keeps using all of these flimsy, terrible excuses. Doug Gottlieb, for example, right, says, oh, well, would you bet your entire salary on Florida State to beat any of these teams? Doug, I'm sorry to tell you this, brother. If anybody bets their entire salary on 18 to 22-year-olds performing in one singular moment, they have a problem. We have hotlines to help them. So every single argument that's been used against Florida State can apply to every other team, except that your quarterback is missing one here. That argument can be applied to every other team that was in that 3 to 4 to 5 range type of deal. And it's a shame, it's a sin, it's a mockery of the sport to leave out an undefeated Power 5. Because at that point in time, what are you saying this thing's about? We all know that finding the best is subjective. But again, how do you get there? What's your metric for getting there? Oh, player unavailability is a big part of it. That's a really big part of it. Oh, well, Florida State, they James, they didn't look good against Florida. They did not look good against Florida at all. And the reality is, them not looking good against Florida is what kept them out. And yet, for some reason, Alabama needing a 4th and 30 conversion against a team that just got dog walked by New Mexico State, the mighty Aggies. Not Texas A&M, not those Aggies. The Aggies from Albuquerque came in and stumped those boys out. And I don't want to hear how tough Jordan Hare is, because guess what? New Mexico State came and stumped them out on that same field. And you're going to tell me, oh, well, Florida State doesn't belong in because they struggle with Florida. Oh, so what that they kept Louisville out of the end zone, the top 20 offense in the nation? That doesn't matter. What matters is they couldn't score enough to convince us that they belong. Is it offense ball or is it football? Well, we lost Jordan Travis. After losing Jordan Travis, we just can't put you in. Is it the ultimate team sport or is it the ultimate quarterback sport? Help me out now. Help me out.
So when I first saw the news, I was like, I was kind of okay with it. But then as kind of everything is absorbed the last few days, I do think this is probably one of the lower moments that we've had kind of deciding a national champion in this entire sport. And Jordan Travis said it, and he said it like, in a very sentimental, heartfelt way, where he said that I wish I would have gotten hurt earlier so that people would realize that this team isn't just a quarterback, which he's actually right on that point too. When you look at like the previous snubs that we've really had in the college football playoff, which we really haven't had any bad ones. I kind of broke that down last week. We had the Baylor TCU thing, 2014, the Penn State winning the Big Ten. Then other than that, it's just kind of been like, the really bad ones, if you could say they're bad, you could say they're not bad, is like the G5 schools going undefeated and being left out. Yeah. But kind of the common denominator with all of those teams was like, none of them were really like hyped up before the preseason. Mm-hmm. And say what you want about preseason rankings, say that they're stupid, anything like that. But like Florida State this year was like ranked number 8 in the preseason top 10. This is like, they have a lot of defense or a lot of talent on this defense. It's very talented. They have NFL wide receivers. Keon Coleman's going to get drafted in the first round of the NFL. There is a lot of talent on this team that isn't just Jordan Travis. And the more that I've thought about it, I'm like, actually, if they got into the playoff, there isn't really that one super dominant team this entire season. I actually think they could have put up a fight when it comes to Michigan or Washington or whoever they would have played.
Well, you got to remember, according to Stephen A. Smith, TCU is the reason that they can't get in. And TCU got demolished by the worst margin of victory in a bowl game ever. And TCU got into that was a semifinal game, wasn't it, James? Didn't they get blown out like that in the semifinal game?
No, it was the final, actually.
It was the final. So wait a minute, James. Wait, hold on. Hold the phone. Hold on. Let me get my people on line. Make sure this is correct. So it was. Okay, so yeah, my people just confirmed. It was a final game, which means they had to win the semifinal game, in which they were double-digit dogs. So I believe what that's saying is that TCU team didn't stand a chance either. Old Max Duggan can't get it done. He's not good enough. Quentin Johnston, they talked about his drop problems even in college in terms of wanting to keep him. He's big, he's explosive, but can he catch it? Can he catch it? Oh, this TCU team can't stop us all. All that. And yet, lo and behold, that undersized defense stopped one of the best running games in the nation with a two-headed beast back there in terms of Donnie Edwards and Blake Cole. So I just want to know, at what point will we admit? Because the worst part about this thing is Kirk Herbstreit and crew were having to talk about this, about leaving Florida State out before Jordan Travis got hurt. Y'all just made Jordan Travis the heavy of this thing. They were openly saying, "Oh, you have to leave Florida State out," and this was before he even got hurt. And the exact scenario that they pitched was the exact scenario that happened. What do you do if Georgia ends up losing to Bama? What do you do? Who gets in? And they said, "Oh, you got to leave Florida State out." A Florida State team that all they did was go undefeated, and in that undefeated season, they beat the Heisman winner, most likely in Jaden Daniels. Because let's just be honest. If you're all the guys who are in the contention for it right now, Jaden Daniels is by far the best. His team is vectless, lifeless, useless without him. That Oregon team, still a very good team with a different quarterback in there. That Washington team, I think they'd be all right. I think they'd be an all right team without Penix. I don't know if they'd be good, but they'd be all right. That LSU team would be dog water without him. They beat that guy by 20-some-odd points. They beat that team by more than Alabama beat them by and held them to less points. But again, there are, I remember hearing that Kid Cudi song when I was growing up, 50 ways to make a record. And there are 50 ways to win a football game. High-flying offense ain't the only way to do it. And I think that I understand why Florida State is so upset and why their boosters and whatnot are talking about leaving the ACC, because the narratives, I find too often that with these big talking heads on national stages, they never let the facts get in the way of a good narrative. If you switch those jerseys on Louisville and Florida State to LSU jerseys and Alabama jerseys, it becomes, this game was a defensive game of the century. Oh, Nick Saban. He's the warden of this thing. He just keeps showing up. If you switch those jerseys for Georgia and Bama, oh, Kirby Smart. I'll tell you what, he's the first Saban assistant to get him, and they're going to get him back every time. At the end of the day, the reality is that was a defensive struggle by two of the nation's top defenses. By every metric imaginable. Both Louisville and Florida State are not outside. I want to say at lowest is the top 30, I believe. And I believe that I'm wrong there. I'm pretty sure they're much lower than that. But I'm being very generous in saying they might be just in the upper third or upper fourth, 25% of all teams in the NCAA. And instead of giving props to, these are two teams that play spectacular defense, and Florida State happened to come out on top because of a two-headed monster at running back in Tofili and Benson that can carry the mail any day of the week. Instead, we get, did you see how shaky that freshman looked at quarterback? Oh, boy. What a nasty time that freshman Nick gave at quarterback. Not about Braden Fisk being an interior defensive lineman getting 3 sacks in a game against a wonderful offensive line from Louisville. Mm-hmm. Not about Jared Verse, a young man he's going to have to wait in the green room in order to get drafted short than both of our hair combined. That's how long he's going to have to wait till he hears his number called on draft day. And instead of talking about that, instead of talking about Kalen DeLoach, one of the best off-ball linebackers in the nation, and his performance, instead we're talking about, well, that quarterback sure did look shaky. Again, you can't let facts get in the way of a good narrative. And that's what the committee has done. That's what the talking heads have done. And I'll tell you this much. ACC Network, you need me. Because Paul Feinbaum is the propagandist for the SEC, and he does an amazing job. He does a fine job of trotting out there every single Sunday. Yeah, we're the best conference.
He's just gargling Nick Saban's ball sack. That's what he does.
Exactly. Listen, I'm going to tell you this. Where I'm from, you at least get the 40 for doing that, okay? Now, Paul, Mr. Feinbaum, I hope you get the 40 ball for doing that. I'm just saying, I know inflation hit. Maybe get 60. Maybe throw a little tip on there. Maybe get up to 70. That's neither here nor there. The reality is very simple. This is a situation where Florida State was penalized because they were not in the right conference. Because if all things considered, this was another situation in another conference, this isn't the same conversation. And honestly, nobody is even having honest conversations about the different conferences around America because they're so fixated on how bad the ACC is. Somebody please tell me this. Who in the Big Ten West do you think could run the table in the ACC? Who? Wisconsin? Iowa? Minnesota? Well, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I got it wrong. Let's talk about the SEC, who has a losing head-to-head record against the ACC. Well, the ACC didn't play nobody. You're counting a win against Vanderbilt by Wake Forest, who was a bottom feeder in the conference this year. So it was bottom feeder against bottom feeder. We had our bottom against your bottom, and who came out on top? Oh, okay. Well, we didn't play any good teams from the SEC. Just LSU. Well, wait a minute. Didn't LSU finish what? 3rd or 4th overall in that conference? Oh, okay. So, it's a sin and a shame that this team was left out. And again, I question the criteria. I question what is it about this team that just made y'all, instead of acknowledging how good their defense has been all year, the 6th best scoring defense in the nation. Jordan Travis was responsible for that? I didn't see Jordan Travis make a tackle all year in a play that he did what he was supposed to do on. So what are we doing here?
This is the Florida State team, too, that has had a pretty impressive rise over the last few years. I was looking at this before we came on here. From 2016 to 2021, this team was 26-33. They had 4 coaches in 5 seasons. It looked like for a while, those first few years, that Jimbo won the divorce. Florida State looked like they were just like kind of a disaster, a tire fire. Norvell comes in, rebuilds it the first 2 years. Last year, they take a lot of the stepping stones into it. And I remember I had you on before the season started, and I was like, I don't know, is this Florida State thing for real? And you kind of said like, hey, man, they got a lot of talent. They have a lot of dudes on this team. This team can compete with anyone in the country. And it's a really big shame that they aren't going to have a chance to do it. And kind of to your point, football is the ultimate like merit-based sport where you work really hard and you achieve something. And we have this system now where it was meant to screw out people from the beginning. When you have a 14 playoff, you have 5, power conference partners. One person is going to get screwed out every single time, if not 2 because of Notre Dame joining in, or, sometimes even 3 if you have Notre Dame and then you have the 2 SEC teams or the 2 Big Ten teams like we had last year. And, I think we really just kind of need to call this what it is. This isn't a merit. Like, this sport doesn't reward merit. It hasn't all year.
No.
Even like the previous few years, like last year, like TCU had a better strength of schedule over Michigan and Georgia heading into like the last week of the playoff, but they're still behind them. And it's like, well, wait, shouldn't we reward strength of schedule at all? This is kind of just like a beauty contest. And if we admit that, then that's okay. But like, I don't know. I don't know where we go from here.
Again, don't let facts get in the way of a good narrative. Because I heard that the Big 12 was terrible. I heard that the TCU barely scraped by and survived. They survived in advance against a bunch of terrible teams. Oh, they just barely got there against a bunch of terrible teams. And Georgia, on the other hand, had demolished all of these powerhouses. And, Kirby's finally over the Saban hump. He finally did it. He finally got over the hump. Look at that. Look at that. Again, when you actually watch the games, when you actually hold a consistent bar across the realms, across the teams, across the conferences, you'll start to see you'll start to peel back the layers of a very stupid glass onion. That's what you're going to see every time you peel the layers back. Because again, what is the metric? You could say Florida State had the 55th strength of schedule in the nation. Okay. But how did y'all then let Liberty in as the group of 5 team, even though they had a worse strength of schedule than every other group of 5 team that was in the contention for that that automatic New Year's Six bid from the highest ranking group of 5 team? How did y'all justify that one? Oh, so it seems to me that just winning you're in only applies some of the time. This thing is a beauty pageant, but the worst part is it's a beauty pageant in which the judges are like, oh, that's my baby right there. Oh, look at them. Look at little Bama. She's so
I paid
cute
for those fake tits and those Kardashian butt lifts.
Hello? Listen, oh my God, I love her so much. Oh, she's so wonderful. That's exactly what we're seeing. We're not seeing a beauty pageant, which is everybody show up and we will judge you based on what you look like. Because again, the math doesn't math on Georgia being the best team in the nation, looking like the best team in the nation, being, hey, they're head and shoulders above everybody else, and then one loss makes them no longer one of the top 4. If they're one of the best 4, if they're the best all year and they lost one game, how does that then drop them out? How does that drop them out? It drops them out when you have this unwarranted beauty contest and you say, well, we already got 2 SEC teams and we can't do 3 SEC teams. That's a little excessive. We're getting a little crazy here. The reality is this thing, like you said, it's set up to screw somebody, but I never thought I'd see the day where the committee comes out and with their whole chest says, hey, we're going to put in who we want in. It's not about who's most deserving. It's about who the best teams are, which, by the way, there's no objective standard for that. There's no objective standard.
Well, a lot of people have been saying, like, well, this is the last year that we're really going to have to worry about this because we're going to a 12 team. Like, if Florida State would have, in a 12 team, if they would have lost, they would have still been in. Mm-hmm. And that's where I'm getting kind of like nervous because I don't know how this playoff is going to look like heading into next year, where we have 4 power conference technically because the Pac-12 is like dead. It's dead. Everyone has moved around in that conference. Yeah. And my biggest fear is when we're getting into this is that are we going to have like a world where we're debating like I've thought about, I haven't felt too bad for the Florida State fans. I feel bad for like the coaches and the players.
Yeah.
I don't feel bad for the fans. Like, you guys won a national championship before. Like, you're going to win one again, probably. I would feel a lot worse if it was like teams like our teams that like it would be like our one and only chance to make a Final Four or make a top 12 playoff. Your school probably a little bit more likely than mine. But I think I'm just, are we going to have like a reality where we're debating like 10-2 ACC teams now versus like 8-4 like SEC teams? And that's kind of what I'm really scared of, because you're going to look at like an LSU and be like, well, they lost to Texas and Alabama and Georgia and Texas A&M if they get their stuff together. So I don't know what the debates turn into heading into next year.
And this is why, again, ACC Network, give me a call. You know what I mean? You can pay me real cheap. You know what I mean? I'll give you everything you need. But here's the reality. I came up with a plan to solve this problem. The playoff format needs to take out the human aspect. Take out the viewer. Take out the thought. Bring back the computers, number one. And number two, here's what the 12-team playoff should look like. There are 10 conferences, now technically 9, because they got rid of the Pac-12. So there are 9 conferences. Here's where the first 9 seeds should go, or here's where at least 9 of the spots should go. Every conference champion that is inside the RPI top 35, maybe 40, but I think 35 is a good number there. Every one of them, you're in. You're in. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no haggle. The seeding is based upon where the computers put you, but you cannot be a team that gets a bye if you're not a conference champion. That's just a fact. That's just, if you don't win your conference, no bye for you. No soup for you, Fred. But everybody else, you go ahead and get in there, get what you need to get. And if your conference is outside of that RPI top 35 or so, you get replaced with an at-large bid. Now, that prevents a moment like a 7-5 Toledo just won the MAC. And Like, we were not expecting that. So, like, they're technically in, right? Wrong. And that way, you give teams that have a realistic shot a chance to win this thing, and we don't have a moment like this. Because at that point in time, the at-larges are even decided by the computers. And the computers saying, all right, who's the best? Who's the best? That's who goes in. Get the humans out of it. Get the human, because I was never opposed to the BCS in terms of the computers and them deciding who gets what. I just always felt like every other sport has a playoff. Every other sport has multiple teams that get to decide this thing. It's a deep and vast array of teams that get to decide this. And you are the only division that doesn't do this. Division 3 football has a tournament. Division 2 has a tournament. Division 1, why are you the only ones? Or rather, FBS instead of FCS, why are you the only ones that think you're too good to have a tournament like everybody else? Make the bowl games the playoff games and roll from there. That's what you do. That's what you do.
A thing that I've been wondering too is if a 12-team playoff, because right now we're having like this race with all of the with every like basically, you know, group of 5 or not group of 5, but Power 5 like team. It's a race to get into like the 1-2 big conferences. Unless you're Notre Dame, then they're fine just being independent for a little bit.
Yeah.
And with this new playoff format, because now it's like, hey, like if you do win the Big 12, you do get a shot in. If you do win the ACC, you do get a shot in, or you know, most likely. And I'm another thing, I'm just very curious to like this next decade or however long we're going to have this 12-team playoff as presently constructed. Because I mean, they're going to keep expanding it, more money, all of that stuff.
Of course.
You know, probably. And like, are we going to have some sort of like reverb effect where like Texas A&M just kind of like sits back and is like, you know, like, why don't we just go to the Big 12 and maybe we can win that conference, get an easier path in? Because I feel like we need to have some sort of balancing out of the conference. And I don't know if it's going to be, maybe there's like 5 groups from the SEC or 5 teams from the Big 10 and they just combine like, you know, we're just going to go and make our own conference and we'll do this kind of thing. I just, you know, you could tell me like 100 different options, but it looks like it's probably just going to be a race to who gets into the Big 2 conferences. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a whole different conversation. I think that we're headed to, again, I talk about the singularity a lot, right? People, for those of you who are AI nerds and all that, not that type of singularity where Skynet is going to enslave all the humans. I'm talking about a singularity in terms of college football as a whole separating from the NCAA. That's where we're heading. That's where we're heading. There is too much money in college football, and this is America, baby. Money talks and everything else walks, including rules and regulations. We have seen it time and time and time again. If you have enough money, those rules and regulations don't apply to you. That is what is going to happen with college football. Ultimately, these 2 super conferences are going to merge into one, and then it's going to be, oh, we're a separate thing from the NCAA altogether, because all the teams will have realized, now, wait a minute. We got to give money to rowing, swimming, fencing, field hockey, all these things. Why are we doing that instead of just paying these players directly out of the TV deals or whatever the case may be, and keeping our administrators paid and cutting out the middleman of the NCAA? What's going on here? Now, will it be the Wild Wild West, of course, when that first pops up? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to be madness. It's going to be bedlam, just like what we're seeing with NIL right now. But going forward from there, we're going to get something more regulated that is, again, separate from the NCAA, because they don't want to be subject to the NCAA stipulations, rules and regulations. They just don't.
Yeah, I kind of to tie a bow on this, I'll be kind of like a little bit sarcastic here. You know, college football is a sport that is run by evil. Money is the root of all evil. And if you kind of look at like the layout of like how because I did a little bit of research on this. Like if you go back to like the 90s, there was like at least like 6 to 7 like conferences. If you were in each one of these conferences, you at least thought that you had like a chance to win a national title, because we had like our Power 5 that we have now, except like the Big 10, or excuse me, the Big 12, I think might have been the Big 8. You had the Southwest Conference, then you also had like the Big East. So you had like 7 conferences that like legitimately could have like won a national title. And you kind of look, when did it really change? Because there's a lot of years it's like you could win the SEC, but you were like 6th or something. It was like, that doesn't even make like any sense now if you look at it, unless like you do have a bunch of undefeated teams. And basically, like the root of all evil, I think, is like when things really changed and shifted in the sport is when Nick Saban went to Alabama. So Nick Saban is the root of all evil.
Well, I mean, it's not just Nick Saban. that correlation is not always causation, and I think that that's one of those moments because I think the biggest thing that made everything go the way it is, and y'all know who's about to get caught out, a team that I'm sure you're not very fond of. Why did you do the Longhorn Network? Why, Texas? Why? You all started a very rapid descent and race to the bottom that we are seeing right now. Why'd you need to do it? Did you feel good about yourself? When it was coming down to it and toward the end of your team's network, and when it was literally hours upon hours of coverage of just the little cattle. What's their mascot's name?
The Longhorn.
When it was just the Longhorn, when y'all literally could not show anything but an actual living Longhorn for hours on end, did you feel good about yourself? Did you sleep a little more warmly that night? Yeah, because that's what drove this. The TV money and TV deals were ultimately what did this, and it got ridiculous when Nick Saban came back. It just so happened to work out in that way, but these TV deals are really what drove this. And if you look at conferences that are getting left behind and why, you see that there was somebody somewhere along the line that made a horrible deal. For example, in the ACC, Mr. Swafford, come on down, buddy. You pushed all of those deals to Raycom, where your son worked, and look what happened. Look at the value of those deals against the value of everyone else's deals, and this is why the ACC is where it is today. That and the decision to be mainly a college basketball-focused school, but that's neither here nor there, or a college basketball conference. But the reality is the biggest thing was those TV deals. The TV deals and the TV money, I mean, Nick Saban, while he probably is the root of a little evil, aren't we all? Who among us? But the TV deals are the actual, if we want to get to the heart of the problem, that's the heart of the matter.
Yeah, I think this is basically the beginning of the end of the ACC. You could say it could have happened a few years ago. You could have said they signed their last TV deal or whatever. But it seems like this is just it's just all going to fall apart here soon. And
the beginning of the end was a long time ago, but now we're just seeing some moments where we can point to and be like, that's a pretty big domino there. That's a pretty relevant domino that fell. This is going to be one of them. Absolutely.
Also, you were asking the name of the Texas mascot. It's Bevo. Bevo.
When y'all had to show Bevo for multiple hours on end on TV, did you feel good about yourselves, Longhorns? Did you feel good? Did you feel? Congratulations. You are why we are where we are. But I guess they're in the playoff now, so I guess it worked out for them after all, huh? I guess they knew about Quinn Ewers all those years back. But yeah, it's a situation where, again, the TV money has completely corrupted this thing to the point where we're no longer again, one of the biggest parts of the narrative deal, if you look at the schools who produce the most viewership, right? Those schools that produce the most viewership and conferences that produce the most viewership, SEC and the Big Ten. That's the reality. That's the reality. The game every year. I tell people all the time, I live in North Carolina now. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I tried to tell the folks down here, you don't have a rivalry that's to that level. And that's not a disrespect to Duke and North Carolina. That's not a disrespect to NC State and UNC. It's not a disrespect to the Palmetto Bowl with South Carolina and Clemson. Y'all have not seen anything like that. That is a totally different beast. And we see it pan out every year in terms of viewership, in terms of numbers and all that. And that's the reality that we're looking at. That's the reality that we're looking at.
In about 13 years, I think our teams will be in the same conference. That'll be fun.
Hey, listen, I'm ready to come on and give you a pregame in a bunch of years when we got salt and pepper in our beards talking about, remember the old days before you had a salary cap of $20 million on your team? Boy, I tell you, college football sure has changed. Hey, can we trade linebackers? I like that kid. You got a lot. And his deal is very team friendly. He's only making $40,000 in NIL a year. We can work the numbers out.
He comes from a family farm, so his family's already got money. He doesn't need the big salary.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Our teams were really close to playing in a bowl this year. I thought we were going to, because we beat Kansas State the last week of the regular season in the snow game, and then we also had a better. I think we had a better conference record than them. We had the head-to-head, so I was kind of confused why we didn't. I was looking forward to it. I thought we were gonna have a little bit of a showdown between us.
Listen, I would have loved to have that episode. I would have loved, because James, I've never seen you truly fired up. And I wanted to get you fired up. I was going to push some buttons about your head coach. Hey, Matt Campbell is Dave Doran of the Big 12. He just doesn't win as much. That guy's a dork. I hate him. Everything about him's ugly. I would have loved to push the buttons a little bit, man. But in reality, who knew where the ACC teams were going? The ACC teams didn't even know where they were going because there was a 3-hour holding pattern on the bowl games in the selection Sunday this week. So, I would have loved to play Iowa State. I think that would have been a great time. But, things worked out how they did. And we've got Kansas State, which I think you all got the raw end of that deal on. What bowl did you all end up getting?
Liberty Bowl.
And that's
Memphis.
Memphis.
It's in Memphis, and we're playing Memphis.
Tuck your chain. Tell all them boys from Iowa State, if you got any, don't you do no shaduring up there. That's not a place to be playing around now.
We had that bowl, like it was the same exact bowl game in 2017. Iowa State played Memphis in Memphis again. And that was like our first bowl game in a long time. And basically it's like, because like all of the Memphis fans, like they just live in the city, so they didn't go out and do any like bowl festivities. So like
of course,
everyone from Iowa just like took over that entire like Beale Street area. It was pretty cool.
Oh, all right. Well, more power to you. Hopefully y'all can do it again. I hope to be down there in Orlando for the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I'm not gonna lie to you. When Dave Doran said, hey, I'll eat a Pop-Tart if I can wash it down with bourbon, I almost told him, my brother in Christ, is everything okay at home? That is a sugary, very bland snack. It is not something that's got a strong taste that you need to wash down. If you want to drink the bourbon anyway, just say that, but we need to get into the root of this drinking problem. I'm just joking, Coach Doran. You know you're good with me, and I don't think you have a drinking problem. That was just a hilarious quote. But yeah, no, absolutely. These bowls are going to be very interesting this year, and it's going to be a great time seeing how these things shake out. And I wonder, it used to be the during the season out of conference records were how you measure teams, but now apparently that doesn't work because everybody's saying, oh, you didn't play the best out of our conference. And it used to be the bowl games are how you measure conferences, to say, well, our team went X and X in our bowl games, and our schools went X and X in their bowl games. But now everybody and their mama's sitting out, so it's, well, you played a team where, you guys are just lucky that you got a bunch of accountants on your team, and that's going to be their last time ever playing football. My guys are going to play on Sunday. I wonder how we actually measure conferences against each other. I wonder how we do that, other than saying, well, they've got the granddaddy of coaches. He's going to be on the Mount Rushmore. That Harbaugh's won everywhere he's been. Oh, yeah, he's got to be the guy. I wonder how we're actually going to start measuring conferences against each other when all the dust settles.
Yeah, I have no idea how that's going to work out, because it just feels like everything's just shifted to the top two. And again, like we're just going to be living in a new reality next year where like even like the Big 12, like they don't have like the two like with Texas and Oklahoma, those were like the theoretical like pillars of the conference.
Yeah. And
it's like, I don't know who are like, it's actually going to be an interesting kind of betting angle next year of like who's going to win the Big 12, because you have I think it's going to be one of the new, I think it's either going to be Utah or Arizona. That's who I think I would have as like the favorite, because Utah kind of had like the seasons from hell where like they kept having their quarterbacks get hurt. And then like Arizona, just like if Arizona could have like snuck into that, into the Pac-12 championship game, I actually think they could have won it, because they just like down the stretch were just the hottest team in the country all year.
Yeah, I agree. Arizona, and the surprising thing about Arizona is we looked at Arizona a lot like we looked at the teams in Virginia. Oh, that entire state's a wash. Everybody over there is bad. Let's not really look in that direction. Look away. Don't see the train crash coming. And Arizona's sitting there like, yes, look away, please. Don't pay attention to what we've got going on over here. No, but very seriously, that's a very good Arizona team. They go into the portal hard. They have gotten some big-time guys out of the portal. And I'll tell you what, if they can find a way to keep Arizona's best at home, because while many people don't think of Arizona as a recruiting hotbed, some of the best players in the nation have legitimately come out of there. And if you can keep those guys at home, it's not only that you get to keep them, other people do not have them. A little bit of Kevin Durant effect there in terms of like, we may not need you to win, we just need you off the thunder. It's the same type of deal there. Like, with your best players always going to USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, it's going to be tough for those schools to win. So if they can recruit home well, keep dominating in the portal, I think Arizona has a very good chance to be the top dogs in the Big 12 next
And Brock Purdy, Arizona.
You know, I'm just saying, Mr.
Gilbert.
Irrelevant might have been real relevant as a Wildcat.
Mm-hmm. How are you feeling about the Lions this season?
Oh, it's a great time. Let me tell you something. You know, I was eating at one of my former coaches' house on Thanksgiving, and they were trying to heckle me about being a Lions fan and about the fact that the Packers were going to beat us. And I'm like, number one, the best the Packers can do is split with us. So more power to them. Good for them, I guess. Y'all don't understand. I grew up for years, decades, if you will, watching old Percocet Brett come back in the last moment. Every time you thought, oh man, we got him beat, Brett Favre will pull some magic out of his rear end, the type of which that Hogwarts wouldn't even allow. And they'd win the game. And then when he started to slow down and get a little older, I said, oh, it's our time. It's our time. Brett's about to be out of there. And then old Ayahuasca Aaron steps up and turns into this magical quarterback that's even better than Brett Favre, that had us clamoring for Brett Favre back, because at least with Brett, we looked like we had an opportunity to win in the first half of the game. And Aaron just came through stumping mud holes the size of Mississippi in that team. And so I sat there and I told those guys, I said, listen, y'all got to understand, I was a fan through 0-16, baby. We could lose this game and still be in the front of the division. I don't know how to act as a Lions fan being able to say that. I don't know how. You know what the Packers fans used to say to us whenever we would beat them? Congratulations on winning your Super Bowl. Now we've got to go win an actual Super Bowl. And it's like, all right, bro, relax. Like, y'all have like two of those things since Vince Lombardi said, we need a sail here and run it in the alley. So let's stop acting like y'all are just the dominant, preemptive team. You're called Title Town because you won the first couple. Knock it off. But with that being said, it's a great time being a Lions. Having a team that you feel comfortable about, that you could go into those games. I used to go into the games like, hey, assume they're going to lose. That way you can only be surprised. Now, Sundays are stressful for me. Now I understand why fans get so up and antsy for all their other teams. Because I used to be looking around the NFL like, why are you so mad? It's okay. It's going to be okay. Now that I have a good team, it's not okay. It's never going to be okay if the Lions lose that Sunday. No, but seriously, it's a great time seeing those guys be good.
Well, I was watching the Barry Sanders doc last night, and just to like how bad like Detroit was through like that whole like 90 stretch, like those Barry years were actually like a little better than you'd think, but just basically since then, and just like the tire fire, it's just really awesome to see. Like, and if you watch, like, I have a bunch of Lions on like some fantasy teams, they're just like a fun team to watch. Like, they have a good energy about them. David Montgomery, my favorite all-time Cyclone. Leading the way in the backfield. He's just like we just love him as Iowa State just because he has this like kind of blue collar mentality. I get a little worried for him watching him play for Detroit because it feels like every time he just runs so hard. Every time he gets tackled, I'm like, did he just like twisted an ankle again or a knee? Like, did he just get a broken rib again? Does he have a concussion? Like, just runs really hard, but still somehow finds a way to be on the field. So, good thing for Lions fans. Good thing for Detroit because the Pistons are just that's.
Nobody talk about the Pistons right now. We talk football. We're here to talk football, okay? We ain't gonna talk that losing streak is so long. I'm starting to say, do y'all need me to come in and start? I'll do a little something for you now. I may not be able to do everything, but if Kane kick it to me, I'm gonna knock down one or two of them three. But that's neither. Now let me ask you this: you said you got multiple Lions on your fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta ask, you're an Iowa State guy, one of our best performers in fantasy this year, Sam Laporta. Do you have a Hawkeye on your fantasy?
Yeah. I'm one of them. I have Laporta. Yeah, he's awesome.
Interesting. I'm not much of a fantasy guy, but I know if it's not paid fantasy, I would never take a target. Now, if it's paid fantasy and I got to do it, you know what I mean?
Well, there's not too many like Hawkeyes that you can really get like in fantasy because it's all like offensive players.
Oh, that's true.
Like they're not pumping out too many quarterbacks or too many, like
they're
it's just the tight ends
for a reason. That's it. That's all they got.
It's not like I have any bad memories of like Sam Laporta like catching awesome passes against Iowa State. Like
that's very fair.
Those games, like it's kind of been really bad the last few years. Iowa's just been like dominating Iowa State. It's basically just like they're just checking down the ball like every single time, and then they're just beating us because they have the better like physical bodies. But hoping the tide shifts. I think that was just the Brian Ferentz. Now that he's gone, maybe our luck changes a little bit. I don't know.
Hey, listen, I'm gonna tell you this, okay? Do you know how bad you got to be at your job for your dad to be your boss and you get fired? Oh, I don't know if him leaving is a good thing for the rest of the country. I'm not sure, but
So
we will see.
so the interim athletic director is the one that fired him.
Yeah. I know that they told him the 25-point ultimatum, right? They said, hey, if you can't get to 25 a game, hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more.
Yeah, and Kirk, after like he got fired, his son got fired, he kind of came out and was like not very like committal to like the team.
Mm-hmm.
So there was kind of like a conspiracy theory going on that that Kirk would just like leave and just go coach like some other team with his son and just do it that way. But I don't know. I've got a lot of issues with Kirk Ferentz. I think he's kind of like propped up, and a lot of times he's kind of a complainer. If you really look at him like year to year, like he had that whole thing with like the Minnesota thing, like even after like the Nebraska game, he was still complaining about it. He's just kind of a whiner and complainer, like Kirk Ferentz.
I'll tell you what. If they went to go coach another school, the Big Ten West would cave in on itself entirely. And I know that they're getting an infusion of new blood with Washington and Oregon. But you are two West Coast teams being bad away from being the worst division in football, in Power 5 football again.
Well, they demolished the divisions now. It's all over now. This is the last year of it.
Oh, well, never mind. Good for the Big Ten. But those two leaving, that would be a very big blow to the Big Ten because who else do you think can go into Iowa and make it happen? Like Iowa is not and I know some people are not going to like to hear this. I think Iowa's ceiling in terms of perennially is what Penn State is right now. Like, oh, everybody thinks very highly of you. Everybody thinks you're a good school, but like you might have a year or two where you beat those really good schools. You'll never be perennially like that school that's like, hey, we're the top dogs. We're TDE. Everybody answers to us now. I don't think they can ever.
Well, I think their defense is kind of like propped up. Like their defense is really good, but I also think it's like if you have like multiple children and there's like one child that's like the screw up, the one that's like does drugs, is borderline homeless, has been in and out of rehab a bunch of times. Like that's the Iowa offense, and their defense just looks so like impressive and like
that
beautiful.
Kid's just
and like
an accountant and not doing anything crazy. It's just like, oh, they're an accountant. They pay for their apartment on time. That's it.
Yeah, I've started to I was kind of laying out. I've been starting to do like some more gambling stuff on here where I pick games each week, and I was kind of laying out like Michigan over Iowa last week, and it's like if you really look at it, like you might be a little mean saying this, but like we talk about how good Iowa's defense is, but like are they the fourth best defense in their conference? Because like I think I'd probably pick Michigan's over them. Penn State's is like really really good, and like Ohio State with Jim Knowles now and like the talent that they have, like. Again, you could maybe like say it's a toss up. So like, even if they do improve the offense, I still don't know how that like improves their program ceiling like that much. I guess it's just better for the fans, more entertaining. They have a shot, I guess, but I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I feel you. With some of those teams that's coming over, you aren't getting the scrubs in the Pac-12. Like, it's terrible to say this, but you're not getting the bottom feeders that are like, oh yeah, we struggle to get to a bowl game each year. You're getting the big dogs. You're getting the Oregon of the they're doing it for substance. They're doing it on the field. Too bad they couldn't do it on the field against a good team. Hate that for them. But anyway, yeah, they're doing it for wins and not engagement. That's who you're getting there. And Washington, I mean, although they're not perennially a power like this, we have seen multiple times, multiple iterations of Washington teams, right? The John Ross III, Max Browning teams that were really good. And now you've got this iteration with Michael Penix and company, Rome Odunze and company. This is, I'll tell you what, Washington is one of those teams that they could pop up on you every couple of years now.
I think they could beat Texas this year or in a month or whenever they play. Like I think they have legit, like they played last year in the Alamo Bowl, and I think Washington won. Yeah,
I agree that they have a really good shot of beating that Texas team. The only game that I will tell you, that I can tell you with no doubt about, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, Michigan is 2.5-point favorites. If I was a betting man, if betting was legal in North Carolina right now, which it will be when that game actually happens.
Oh, there you go.
I'm hammering that. I want Michigan right now on that one because Alabama is coasting off of their jerseys and their head coach. That is an Alabama team that has a soft chin. That is an Alabama team that's stopping the run, particularly in the heart of that defense is the problem. Everybody says, how did Auburn almost beat them? How did Auburn almost beat them? Simple. Line up, say, hey, those A-gaps look mighty fine there that you got, Alabama. Let's go ahead and see how well the boys with the A's on the side of their helmets defend this, or not on the side of their helmets, but on their logos defend this thing. And they struggled to. They struggled mightily. For all the edge rushers that they have in Turner and company, they're phenomenal. I think their edge rushers are phenomenal. But the heart of that defense, in the words of the TikTok trend, you got soft hands, brother. You got soft hands.
Yeah, it'll just be, is Michigan going to kind of like underachieve like they have the last two playoffs? Yeah. And that's kind of like, if Michigan shows up, they have the talent to beat them.
Oh, and absolutely.
That's going to be kind of the biggest question mark when we're heading into the playoff there. Kenton, I've kept you too long here. Can you tell us where we can find all of your work and where we can hear more of your rants on the Florida State situation, and then we'll get out of here?
Oh, for sure. Locked On ACC and Locked On Wolfpack are two places you can find me wherever you are listening to your normal podcast. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, tons of places. Anywhere you go to listen to your normal podcast, you can find us. You can also find me at Locked On College Football Live. That is during the college football season every Friday. And if there is a change in the schedule, we'll let y'all know. But it airs on every college channel across the Locked On network. So, you anywhere you look for me, I ain't too hard to find. On Twitter as well, TGIF_Ken. I'm always yelling or ranting about something on sports. I'm always telling some national talking head, hey, I get it. You're paid a lot more than me to do this, but boy, you are wrong on this one. So that's where you can find me.
All right, thanks, man. I'll be betting on your team.
Hey, I appreciate it. I'm not going to lie and guarantee that I'll be betting on yours, but, I'm not a betting man. That's the only reason why. That's the only reason. It's not because I think Iowa State is bad. I'm just not a bettor. I wouldn't even bet on NC State, okay? That's just who I am. So,
All right, perfect. Thanks, man.
All right, appreciate it.